Hi, Emery. Privileged to gather on the unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan unceded territory.
Thank you. Up in Prince George.
We'd like to acknowledge we are currently on the traditional territory of the Lheidli Dene people.
Thank you. And in Terrace. Unmute.
There you go. We're on the Tsimshian territory.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Did I miss anybody? Great. I know that there will be some people who are tagging in. They have told us they're unable to be with us for the entire session today, but they're going to go from their locations wherever they may be, and we will welcome them as they do that. One of the things that David Weiss talked about when we met last year is he talked about closing the gap between what leaders say they want and what their organizations can actually deliver. And that's a bit of the innovative gap. And I have to say, what we have wanted this entire time is to be connected in a remote fashion that actually worked. And maybe we closed the gap today and that we actually have delivered this today. And so I'm very pleased that all of us are able to come together in this format. We learned a lot last summer, and I know that I really appreciated the kind of time that we spent growing as a network, and I also appreciated being reminded of the principles of the OECD and what that brings to us, of being reminded that we need to have boundaries on what we do. As David Weiss said, that we have to have diverse teams and welcome them into our thinking, and that we need to be not just an innovative leader, but a leader of innovation. And my hunch is that the stories we're going to hear today will be able to demonstrate all those different things that we've been able to do over the course of the year. So as we look very quickly through the agenda, and we are so close to being right on 1:15, it's amazing. The way we're going to invite people to share the reflective questions that we had presented to you is up to you in how you might do that. We're going to give each of you sort of the 3 minutes. We won't have everybody in place, so it's going to give us lots of talk time as well. That we'll start with the first group, and we're going to ask the Kelowna folks to begin and give each of you about 3 minutes. And during the time that each one is speaking, you have either the electronic version, a print version of those questions, and of a response in what you heard, what we appreciate, what we noticed, and what we wonder. And I invite you individually just to make some notes as you're listening to each one of the individuals. And as we draw those conversations to a close, then we'll mute everything right down and give you an opportunity in your locations to then talk about what you heard, appreciated, noticed, and wondered as a conglomerate, as an aggregate of those conversations. And that's when you go into the backbeat and you just start loading it up, so that we will be able to record all of those kind of networking conversations that you've heard from each one of the presentations. Any feedback you want to give people and appreciate what they're doing, ask questions, it'll all be recorded for us. So we'll have about half an hour then to play with those presentations. We'll call ourselves back together at 2 o'clock, and we'll sort of manage it from this end. And then the next group will share, and we'll share from here in the Metro people and up in Golden. Then take another break, and for half an hour in your hub location, be able to have conversation about what you've heard. The third group will then take up to Prince George and invite you to share. And the fourth group will come back to Metro and tag in with many of our facilitators. Because we don't have everyone sharing, we will still stick to the 3 minutes. And if somebody comes in offline or online and they're not in a hub, we'll give them their 3 minutes as well. and we'll stick to that 3 minutes of sharing because that's what we said to do. So the time may shuffle as we go through the day, and it may mean we're out a little bit earlier because not everybody is able to join us today, so that'll be fine. We'll be the timekeepers at this end and be able to move us along as we are. Okay, does anybody have any questions about the process? Everybody understand? We're good? All right, fantastic. We're going to start off then and kick over to Kelowna. And the Kelowna folks, we're going to open you up. And so we would ask that that whoever is presenting first, just of course remind us who you are, because the screen only tells us Jody at this point. And I'll give you 3 minutes, and we will sort of time it. And when you see me kind of wave, then you're wrapping up the last 15 seconds or so of your conversation. If you're in the flow, we certainly don't want to interrupt anything, and we'll try not to do that for sure. But that'll allow you an opportunity to share. Everyone else is going to have an opportunity to just take some notes for now, and then we'll end it. We'll call this when we're finished sharing. All right. So who would be up first in Kelowna? We're going to make you live introduction, and here we'll watch your 3 minutes.
Well, I guess I'm live first. Thank you so much, everyone. It's nice to see everyone again. And I'm happy that everything seems to be flowing really well. I won't do much preamble. My name's Jim Laird. I work in Kelowna, SD23. And I'm going to time myself as well because I want to make sure I stick to the time because I could ramble for a long time. Okay. So I started last summer by looking at innovative learning environments within my school and looking at ways to deepen relationships between schools and actually collaborating closely with one of my colleagues here, Rod Garudik will speak. In December, my whole kind of life changed when I was asked to open a brand new innovative school in our school district. And part of the challenge of opening that school was to engage students and parents in a different way. I don't know if they can see my screen or not, but
No.
Oh, there we go. Okay, well, we might as well we'll put the screen on. If not, we'll be good too. Well, I'm just going to keep talking right now, and we'll see what kind of comes up. The challenge was to engage parents and students differently, and not really knowing kind of where to start. I worked really closely with my assistant superintendent, and we started looking back at the 7 principles of learning for the OECD and looking at the spirals of inquiry. And again, that first principle is students at the center. And again, scanning with the spirals is about finding out what's going on for our learners and getting a deep understanding about the students in the school and the families. And so that's where I decided to start. And it's something that we haven't really done in our district about doing large-scale empathy interviews, getting to gather lots of data, engage community in a way about ideating about hopes and dreams about the new school. And so what's been really interesting is having a very curious mindset and thinking about learning last summer, really looking into what matters most in schools. And so I ended up sitting down in April with 140 of my students and having small empathy interviews, gathering lots of data about their hopes and dreams, about the people they love to work with, about their dream school, which was very rich. And now we're starting to work with parents. My vice principal and I, we're gathering data from families and correlating that data. And now that I've been hiring staff, which ends this week, thankfully, what we're going to be doing is breaking down data from staff, parents, and students and creating a really strong foundation about what matters to our community in opening the school. It's resonating with families and with children and with staff, and it's going to be a really interesting adventure. So as we start to kind of continue down that inquiry framework, thinking about who matters most, it's a really interesting process. That's just under 2.5 minutes. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. And I appreciate that. And just, I heard you really talking about a whole community, and I really appreciate your use of curiosity in what you're doing. And I noticed that the OECD principles were at the front of what you were doing, and particularly that students were at the center. And I wonder what it's going to look like moving forward as you work with and they won't get on board with what you're doing. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to jump to the next, but you'll notice what I was just trying to do is say what I heard, appreciated, noticed, and wondered, and that's what we're inviting each one of you to do as you hear in response, and then again, we'll do that in aggregate later. Okay, thank you very much, and let's move to number 2.
Hi, I'm Scott Parker, and I'm a principal at Glen Rosa Middle School. The timing of the week we had at UBCO was fantastic for me because we were kind of in the midst of planning some massive restructuring at our school. We were in the middle of a shift to a 6 to 8 program in my part of the district, but we had to keep our grade 9s at our school. So we were trying to invent a 6 to 9 model. And I guess, you know, at the point of coming in July, we were really focusing our decision-making around, we kind of call it our foundational pieces. So the nature of learning and the OECD 7 principles, and this we believe, the AMLE 16 characteristics of effective middle schools. And why every staff meeting, every discussion, we would bring those up. We would ask teachers, which of the 7 principles resonates with you most today? We'd usually pick 3 of the 16 characteristics and say, which ones represent you today? Because every day is a different day in that journey. And we always wanted to anchor any decision-making model we made on some good research and what was best for kids. Because it's really easy to say, I don't like this and what's best for me as a teacher. I'm glad we did that because we got into the year and into that process, and then a decision was made to add French immersion to our school. So, you know, in the midst of trying to build something new, we had to pull it apart, and now we're creating another community for September. So yeah, I guess those foundational pieces were helpful. What I noticed about it in my growth this year was, you know, you can set the conditions and support people in change, but there's fatigue to change. Even if it's good and even if they agree, even if everybody agrees, it's still grueling and hard. And that's why it's always important for us to go back to the documents that I referenced because, you know, why are we making decisions? So we have a problem. Let's look at the solution. And, you know, this we believe especially, and the 7 principles, it always pulls it back to what's best for kids, you know, what's best for learning. And I guess that's the evidence that the anecdotal evidence that I've collected is that the teachers are about what's best for learning. That's sort of the mantra we have, not what's best for me as an individual. Then the next piece I guess we did is we kind of walked away from research and leaned on some of the colleagues in this room that you'll hear from, and Jim, you've already heard. We took teams of teachers to their middle schools and said, we're the second zone in the midst of this 6 to 8 change. So we have people that are at different points in that road. Trent's school has already moved into a French immersion program. We leaned on their expertise. So yeah, that's my 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Scott. Yeah, so much going on, and I love that you're hanging things on the principles, and I really appreciated how you're asking people which characteristics every single day, because every single day is a new day. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. All right, let's move to number 3.
I'm up.
Hello, Terry.
Hello, everyone. Not sure if the slides are going to come up, but I'm going to start anyways, just in the interest of time. So Jody's working on the slides that I had, but I just wanted to share our journey, if you will. So our inquiry, or my inquiry at the school, but it's been shared amongst myself along with a number of our staff that we've been working together, and we've had a lot of change in staff. However, the focus is around innovative learning environments, and more specifically, there's, within that, a lot around the student-centered, student ownership, student agency that we're trying to accomplish. And we're using a variety of methods, including cross-curricular projects, the OECD principles of learning, Indigenous First Peoples principles of learning as well, co-teaching, co-planning kind of models as we work towards those goals. And then in order for us to do that and continue our growth in those areas, we're really working hard on establishing common language, alignment, and coherence across our school. That includes our staff, students, parents, community. And we've had a lot of staff changeover, so it's constantly going back and trying to bring people up to speed so that we're all on the same page with respect to where we're going. The parent community has required, as we have been implementing the redesigned curriculum and changing our assessment practices and incorporating these pedagogical changes, have required a lot of communication so that they understand what we're doing and we can share the rationale for some of the changes that they're seeing. Part of our strategy for that this year to improve in that area has been to visit all of our grade 6 teachers at our feeder schools. So we're a grade 7 to 9 school. So we visited the staffs at each of those to explain sort of what's going on at our school. We've had a lot of those schools visit us to see what's going on. And then we've been meeting with parents in those each of those elementary school communities as well to explain what's going on at the middle school level. As part of our inquiry, we've been scanning students, staff, and parents for the past 5 years. I would say more strategically around the spirals of inquiry kind of approach in the last couple years, and using sort of design thinking kind of concepts such as empathy interviews as well more recently. So we've scanned our students, about half of our students each of the last 2 years in December with the questions that you see in the slide there. And then we've taken that information and used that, brought that back to staff, looked for patterns and trends, and used that to guide our adult learning and what we needed to do and next steps in our goal. The process of checking for us has been, or the scans with our adults, I should say, have been with our staff. We've tried a few different formats. We've been using written, sort of forms, if you will, exit tickets to collect that input. A few years ago, we tried a Google form last year. This year, we're actually doing one-to-one empathy interviews with all staff, or at least all staff that are willing to participate. And then for scanning with our parents has been primarily centered around the PAC. And we realize that that's a growth area for us as part of our next steps in being able to get broader voice from our parent community. As part of our data collection, one of the things that we're finding is a lot of the scanning information, the checking that we're doing, we found that we were accessing anecdotal sort of feedback. So we're really working to try to gather more quantitative data through some of our databases, MyEd, so student attendance, achievement data, reviewing those things in MyEd, as well as EdPlan Insight, which is a program that we use here in the Okanagan. And then also trying to collect evidence, whether it's student samples of learning, pictures, portfolios, etc. We're trying to gather that as evidence as well. And then as a model for us as adults, we're also working to share as adults are learning and create portfolios for ourselves across our school. Our next steps, we're working on our empathy interviews right now. We'll need to synthesize that information from our staff scan to help guide our direction for our learning for next year. We need more, I need more time along with our team to gather that quantitative data. It's in progress, but we're not there so that we can report that back to our staff, students, and parent community. And then, of course, I think it'll probably be more realistic that we'll be looking at a strategy to get more information from our parents next year. I don't know how you did for time. I feel like I was longer than the first two. What was I?
That's good.
5 minutes?
But it was fantastic.
Nobody gave me a wave.
Well, I tried to, but I probably didn't jump up and down enough. No, it was fantastic. Thank you very much, Trent. I really appreciate that. And that question about data and evidence, I think, is one that's always one that kind of resonates with us as we're have all these initiatives and your innovative learning environment. How do you know how things are going or what's going on? It's a tough one, and I really appreciate that. That's a strategic and a focus that you've got coming forward as you're moving on. So well done. That's great. Fantastic. Jody, just
thanks, Liz.
We did not see the screen that was there, your screen. So we didn't see the slides. Darren, did you see the slides?
We did. They were great.
Okay.
That's good.
Did you see the first set, the very first set that Jim
Yes,
showed?
we did. Yes, we did.
Okay. I am so sorry. I don't know what happened.
Okay, just make sure you go down to that green dot at the bottom there and share.
Yeah.
When you get it, share it on up. We'll give it a try. Not to worry.
We'll fix it this time. I apologize. And those were amazing slides, actually. We might want to share them with the group after. Okay. Sorry,
ask you to
Trent.
send us those slide decks, so as we gather our evidence of how we're doing, we'll make sure we include those.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have to get
All
back.
right, who we got next next there?
We have Anna Lotard, and just have to get sharing. I need to get my cursor back. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, Anna.
How's this working for everybody? Everybody
It's
good?
just awesome. No, that's not what we want to see. I'm sorry. One
That's
moment.
okay. That's take your time. When you go to share, and you'll see a number of possibilities that you can share on your desktop. You just
Yes.
pick a different one.
Can you see that now?
You have to hit stop sharing on the one that you had up. And then go sharing again and pick the other one.
Okay. Hold on a moment.
No trouble.
Here I need to go.
You don't get it ready. If you don't get it right by the next one, you're fired. But you know,
Okay, can you see it now?
no.
Yes, yes, exactly. Share.
Yes.
There?
Yes. Oh, so close.
Desktop, yeah.
Now we see your desktop. So if you,
Oh, you see the desktop.
I do.
That's not what you're supposed to be seeing. Okay.
Well, that's my whole spiel here.
Okay, they're not seeing that. They're not seeing that.
We're done.
Invitation to inquiry.
Beautiful slides.
Okay, do you see that?
Yes. Now if you hit
Okay.
run on that presentation, we'll be good to go.
Okay, go for it.
All right, thank you. So I entitled mine Invitation to Inquiry because that is basically what we did for our school. My big question was, how can I change teachers' environments to allow renewal of practice? So just a quick remembrance, I was a co-principal of 4 schools that we worked together to do professional development. And my focus and my reason for doing this was I wanted teachers to be able to flourish. I wanted them to feel deeply connected to their classrooms and empower them on their journeys. So to do that, I had to first of all come back from the week in July here at UBCO Okanagan and get my co-principal's support. Because of course, like he was a little leery about the idea of blowing up our way of doing non-instructional days. But once I explained to him the reason for doing that, he agreed that this would be a worthy undertaking. So what we did was we took our non-instructional days and we gave them to teacher time for collaboration. So we're very lucky in our district. We had about 7 half days throughout the year where we would get together after school. We'd have a wonderful meal and we might work on writing or whatever our school growth plans were. We really turned that inside out and we gave that back to teachers and said that they had an invitation to inquiry that would be connected to our school plan. We would be offering them time and space, which meant I would go into classrooms, take over their class. They did not have to prep for that time. I actually did social emotional learning with kids K to 7. And we also had a resource teacher who could be the collaborative partner or who could also take over another class so that colleague could be freed. The only caveat, the what we wanted to see, our evidence was going to be that the teachers would present their journey at the end of the year. They also would be sharing questions and their journey at our non-instructional days throughout. So it really was based on that changing results for young children model, using observation as evidence and really empowering teachers to go deeply, depending on who was in front of them. What did I observe? Well, one of the biggest surprises was primary and intermediate collaboration. So we had a K1 teacher and a grade 4-5 teacher who got together, worked on provocation tables to improve writing. And that was really fascinating to see that exchange of ideas, but also understanding for challenges that were in the classroom. We had a big focus on First Peoples principles of learning and environmental education. And I think one of my biggest surprises was the appreciation and the gratitude that developed. Teachers get a lot put on them. There's a lot of added layers that are expected of them. And this really wasn't something that they had to prep for. Someone took over their class. They did not have to have those 2 hours prepared. I would walk in and I developed a better relationship with kids because of that. And then they were truly free to move on. And then of course, change happens. That was up till Christmas. And then I was transferred to a new school. And so I had to go in with that idea of still providing teachers with that opportunity to flourish. I went into a much bigger school where prep was it was linked to music. So then I was able to free another teacher so that the teacher on prep and a colleague of their choice could get together and collaborate. And so just really understanding that time and space was essential. What did I find? Well, I thought I was going to be there till the end of the year and it didn't quite happen. So I didn't really have a lot of opportunity to notice, except conversations and connections were huge. Teachers were excited. They were hungry for that opportunity to further practice in a supportive atmosphere. And then after spring break, this is my big fish in a little fish bowl. I received a different opportunity, and I actually have moved into the school board office, and I am the Director of Learning Designate for School District 51. And it's funny because my focus really hasn't changed. I'm now looking at how can I support district teacher learning to maximize the impact on student learning. And so we have all these great people coming in, Shelley Moore, Carol Fullerton. So how can I help teachers translate what they're learning in workshops into the classroom? And so for me, it's continuing with the collaborative inquiry, the changing results for young children model, and teacher sharing of the journey, because to me that will be the evidence. As teachers are able to articulate how they have changed practice to meet needs in their classroom with the kids in front of them, then we will know that we're on the right track. And I do have resources. I have teacher well-being with Sabra and Keith Walker, developing communities of pedagogical inquiry, Leighton, of course, and collaborative inquiry, empowering teachers in their professional development. So that truly is my focus for the year and will continue to be. And that's it. Thank you.
Wow. Anna, thank you very, very much for that. I really appreciate that your concept of time and space, I know, was important to you when you heard that, and Amelia talked a lot about that last September or last July, and how you've incorporated that. You have also changed your time and space and your position, and yet the learning you're bringing forward is touching everyone, still centered in students and inquiry. So thank you very much for that. And yes, that went on a little bit longer, but you know what? It's kind of hard to contain people's learning to 3 minutes. And so I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Anna. That was great. Okay, who's next up?
Taking the hot seat.
We have Derek Lee.
All right.
I don't have any slides, so you get to look at me for 3 minutes.
Awesome.
Sorry. Hi, everybody. I'm honored to be the principal at A.S. Matheson Elementary School in Kelowna. And one of the main focus of my inquiry focused around system symmetry and how I could create the conditions that I want for my students in the school, for my teachers, and for my own learning. And so we started the year, and this idea came out of short course last summer, with an inquiry into the 7 principles. And as opposed to focusing on any one of the principles, I opened it up for my teachers to engage with principles at every point that was useful for them. And so we engaged in this inquiry around the 7 principles, and then started to expand from that in terms of how do we share our learning and how do we move forward with different aspects of what we were doing in the true learning community of professionals. And so one of the things that we've done, and this is growth, but it's a continuation of a journey that's been going on for a number of years. We use our community learning plan as a way of communicating our learning. And we use it like a portfolio, like a school-wide portfolio. And I would encourage you at some point, if you get a chance, to look at the ASM school community learning plan online. It's very rich, and there are examples of student learning and teacher learning. Through this alignment and the work that we've done, there's a number of examples that I could focus on, but the one that I really want to highlight is one that we're in the midst of now. About 3 years ago, we went through a process of redesigning our school goal. This was prior to my time there, and we focused our goal around building confident learners in our students. And we built that model, the model of what a confident learner looks like, around the medicine wheel, the 4 quadrants of the medicine wheel. We've been working with that for a number of years, but there was always a sense in terms of where the culture, the learning culture in our community was. There were people who were involved in the development of that, and some who were a little bit withdrawn from it. And so 2 years later, there was a sense of ownership from few and compliance from many. So we re-engaged in that conversation this year and brought it to our teachers through a student self-evaluation tool that one of our teachers created in terms of how students could evaluate their own confidence based on the quadrants of the medicine wheel. And that conversation, I believe, because of the work that we did around the 7 principles and engaging our teachers in this collaborative learning community, it's just hit the ground and taken off. Our teachers have redesigned the questions so they more accurately represent what we're looking for from our learners in terms of confidence. And they started there with some of the simple questions. And then it got more complex because our teachers recognized that the medicine wheel is not something that truly represents the Syilx or Okanagan people. And so we've now shifted in consultation with our Aboriginal Education Department with the district, shifted our whole model to represent the 4 food chiefs, which is far more local and true to the territory that we're on. And we're on this journey. We have far more ownership and engagement in this process, and this self-evaluation tool and the redesign of our model is just an amazing example of how we've gone from sort of pockets of ownership with large-scale compliance to large-scale ownership over the work that we're doing around our school goal. And like I say, I do believe it comes from a place of creating that system symmetry where we're all engaged in the same work, the administrators, the teachers, the parents, and of course the students. Almost 4 minutes, I'm sorry.
Oh, Derek, that's just fine. Thank you very much. That concept of system symmetry is really interesting, and the evolution that then comes out of that. And I love that part about how it transferred ownership. So that's really interesting things that's going on a global way in your school. Thank you very much. Okay, who we? All right, who's next? And how many more have you got there, Jody? Just so we're watching.
One more.
This
last
one?
And least. Last and least.
Hardly.
Yeah, and there's another one I sent too. We'll start with the agenda.
I need to get the other. Give us just one moment, please.
And do.
Well,
And this one?
Who was up first? Who was first?
Nope.
Oh, no.
nope. It's this one here. It's the meeting.
Starting change. And then there's this one, final project.
Nope.
Those are the only 2 I got.
Okay, let me send you this one real quick.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh, those were 2 different ones.
2 different documents.
Yeah, I've got the BCPV
I
regional.
sent you the wrong one.
Okay.
My bad. Let me send that to you right now. It was J.
JN.
All right, we're just about ready there?
Yeah, we're just about there.
Okay.
Just about the government inquiry agenda. Here we go. That's what I meant to say. We'll start with this one.
Okay, no worries.
So anyways.
We're just waiting for a quick resend here. Thanks for bearing with us.
No problem, Jody. That's why we put you up first.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's all good.
That's the one.
Okay, that's the one. We'll
And
just go
if we
with
can
that.
scroll up a little bit.
Yeah, and I'll just go to.
We want to go to the meeting objectives. And
Okay,
that's like
and
one
I
thing
need to go to
see.
share screen. Okay, share, and we're on
Rutland agenda.
this one.
That's the one I think. Rutland.
I think you get rid of them.
Share. Are you seeing our screen? No.
Well,
Okay, there we go.
yes, there we go. Got it.
There we go. Okay.
Okay, so a couple things I've elected to put up are a couple of artifacts of some of the work that's being done. It's broad here. I'm going to reference Jim Laird because he's been actively engaged in the work as well over the past year and a half. We have the good fortune of being part of the same zone in our district. We're part of the Rutland zone. So the two sister middle schools and the high school we feed into have been engaging in significant inquiry work. And if you look at where it says meeting objectives, it gives you a sense of what we've been doing really for significantly over the past year, a little bit before that, but more formalized over the past year. We're meeting once every 3 weeks on our own accord. We're setting aside time that we've all committed to, one morning up till lunchtime every 3 weeks. And we're really looking at inquiry through the lens of how we can lead change within our buildings, how we can create the conditions, how we can set the conditions for those changes. So if you look at a typical meeting objective, it's to continue building coherence and shared understanding as an inquiry team around the foundations of our work moving forward. To be able to recognize the dynamics of the authorizing environment, one of the things we've committed to in our zone, the 3 schools, is engaging in coursework through Harvard. And this particular module has been around driving change. And when we talk about the authorizing environment, it's how we can have the public find value in the work that we're doing so that we have the permission to lead that work and move that work forward. So that's just an example of an inquiry at the 30,000 foot level that we're doing as school administrators that's permeating and seeping down into our schools in terms of what we're seeing in our classrooms, creating teacher efficacy, giving them permissions that we're developing through the authorizing environment to do the work that's important, be it around innovative learning, communicating student learning, redesign curriculum. These are all big rocks that are fairly new within the past 5 years or so within the BC context, as we know. So we're really paying attention to, as an inquiry group, how we can create that how we can create the conditions within the authorizing environment to allow people to lead the work within their school, within their classrooms, without facing blowback on some of these big rocks that we're leading. The second artifact I'd like to show really quickly is an additional inquiry group that there's 4 of us that have engaged in as part of the Harvard work. And we developed a problem statement leading to a theory of action. Problem statement being, one of the things we recognize through a scan of all the middle school principals and vice principals is we're recognizing that at each school location, we're not meeting the needs of 3 or 4 at-risk learners we can't provide services that meet their complex needs. So we developed a problem statement around why are we struggling to meet the learning needs of some of our complex, diverse, vulnerable middle school learners. From that, the work we've been doing through the inquiry lens is to develop that theory of action. And so we developed a theory of action about what our beliefs are in relation to why this might be occurring. And from that theory of action, we, as part of our Harvard work and part of our final project, have developed an approach we're going to take that we initially took for the project based on 2 students that are significantly at risk at the Rutland Middle School location where I am and where Jim was previously at spring break. So those are 2 areas of inquiry that we're focusing on, one at the macro level in terms of administrators, one at the micro level. Hey, I'm actually on time. One at the micro level for students within the building. So those are 2 really, really superficial, quick inquiry areas that we're focusing on within our zone and our schools.
Thank you, Rod. A couple of things I really appreciate in that is the collaboration that you have across schools, and I think there's such richness in that kind of networking, and I love that. I really notice how you're trying to have this macro micro such that the conditions for you as principals and vice principals as leaders are trying to trickle down, as you said, to impact what's going on in teachers and classrooms. It's a real sense of modeling, so I appreciated that very much. Thank you very, very much, everybody. Well done for the first run there. We did not see that second set of slides, but that's okay. As we get better at this, we will be able to do that. We will encourage you to send any slides you have to Anne-Marie so that we can make sure that we get those set up on through Better Educate so everybody has access to those. All right, so here we go now. You have time on your own. We're just mute everything, put up your backbeat, and sort of make comments on the things that you heard, you appreciated and noticed and wondered, not for each specific person, but in aggregate of what you heard from those speakers that we just talked to. So mute away, and one person or however many can type away into. Who's gonna kick us off? You ready? Okay, so we're gonna start right now here. Here we go. I'm gonna move. Are we sharing anything? No, chatting.
Hi, I'm Linda Clausen, and I'm in elementary school, and I've been there for 6 years. And so my inquiry is in the context of that school and their school goals. So when I think about inquiry around innovation, it was definitely informed by John Hattie's notion of visible learning and Jenny Donahue's term collective efficacy. The focus of my inquiry is around how to lead innovation in a way that supports visible learning and collective efficacy. And it's in the context of our school goal, which was to promote the joy of reading. So scanning my school, I'd been there already 5 years, and this was a new goal for our school this year. And it was in a response to really low reading scores, particularly in our primary grades. So even though our school, it's about 420 kids, K to 7, 80% are ELL from grade K to 4. So that sort of informed those low reading scores, but we felt that also that if we, am I not loud enough?
There you go.
If we did not do something about that, we were just accepting the fact that our reading scores are low and they will always be low. So we wanted to build a culture around the joy of reading and making it really visible through data and through our intention. Would that change the way teachers view their students and give them permission to be low reading scores, or would that bring their reading scores up? So we joined Delta's district PLC group, which are 8 schools that are collaborating around reading assessment and common reading instruction. And again, like many of you talked about collaboration, one day a month, all our teachers get to collaborate for 1 hour, and we're bringing in 4 TOCs to cover those 4 classes throughout the day. So they have to have a common sort of reading instruction or reading assessment or something that they could agree on, go teach, and then come back a month later and share what they have done about that. So we found that once we gave them that collaborative time, and once we gave them a language around why it's important and the resources to facilitate, we aren't sure if our reading scores went up yet, but we definitely have a common language, and we have that whole idea of collective efficacy of them feeling like they are making a difference and that they're making a difference together. So we have a lot more books being ordered that are leveled books that teachers, we have a lot more teachers doing their own reading assessments, which wasn't happening. They were leaving it to the LST group. And so now that they're doing their own, I mean, we have intermediate teachers reading with every student in their class, and they're like, wow, I didn't know that's what that meant. Primaries do it all the time, but the grade 4 to 7 teachers often don't read individually with their students. And that was probably the biggest difference that I saw in terms of the joy of reading, because they actually knew what their kids were doing, and it affirmed their understanding. So when they said something about how their student is learning, that made the biggest difference. So the attention given to how students learn and what's important to them redirected many lessons, but more importantly, it gave us, as a Gibson staff, more intentional learning goals. And it became important to us about not just what we learn, but how we learn. It gave a lot of freedom to the teachers, and it compelled them to look at learning rather than focusing on the test of the learned. So that was pretty exciting. So I think that the more we can make it visible, the more we can say, this is actually what's happening. This is actually, whether it's through data or through conversation, visibility takes vulnerability and time. And so also inspired by Brené Brown's book, Dare to Lead, and just the idea of it takes courage. It takes the ability to say, I don't get this all, and let's do this together.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Linda. Yeah, I love that. Visibility and vulnerability and how those things go together. That's wonderful. And the concept of joy of learning, to actually bring that back, and not, or joy of reading, and not just reading a text screen, but in fact diving back into the book. So thank you very much for that intentional common language. Okay, we're going to jump into with Nancy now.
Hi, everybody. Nancy Roberts, Windsor Secondary School here in metro area, North Vancouver. And really a pleasure to be on with everybody today. So thanks for your shares. So when I think about my intention for my inquiry and what focus did I choose and that sort of thing, one of the things that I think I should do is set a little bit of context. I work in a secondary school. It's sort of a mid-sized secondary school. It's a very traditional staff who are very comfortable working in silos. So when I was taking a look at what my focus could be, it really was around trying to develop a collective efficacy on staff to support professional development, professional learning, and trying to focus as well on providing focused feedback to teachers to help drive their learning. One of the things that I realized as I reflected on my inquiry over the year is that I was starting really big, thinking that we were going to be able to create this staff collective efficacy. And what I found is that it kind of really morphed into being able to work with small groups of teachers who really wanted to get on board. And so a group of teachers that have been really interested in looking at assessment and sort of looking at it in terms of the redesigned curriculum, and then kind of drilling down within that topic, have been the group of teachers that have been willing to come together to work collectively and to try and develop their own professional growth and working within our school, and actually just recently shifting to work with other people in other schools within our district has been pretty exciting for the small group of us this year. Within that group, part of the feedback piece that they've been working with is trying to provide more specific focused feedback to students to help engage them and also to improve their learning. And so from an evidence point of view, we've got some anecdotal conversations with students who at the beginning of the year were really struggling with where this group was going and how we were providing feedback. And over the course of the year, it's coming together for them a little bit more. And they didn't like the initial changes, but they're working toward understanding it. For my own learning journey, I think the thing that I took away from, or one of the things that I took away from our time together in the Okanagan was really that term, setting the conditions. And I realized that in my role as vice principal, I've had to try and shift and redefine my role a little bit. Again, in my building, this is my third year in this building, and I'm the most senior administrator in my building. My principal has been there for a couple of years, and I have a new vice principal partner as of March break, and she's brand new to the role. So that setting conditions for me has been trying to shift people away from pigeonholing me into just being responsible for tasks and different things that go on in my building from a task perspective to leading learning. And so this small group of people that I've been working with, I think we've been working in that direction. That's been pretty exciting. I think too that from my own personal learning journey, and it's been mentioned earlier, I think Anna was focusing a little bit on wellness, and so that's something that I've been focusing on in my own learning journey. And I think, generally speaking, over the course of the last couple of years, the Okanagan summit that we shared together, the learning that I've done this year, I did some LCL learning last year, and then focused really on assessment, working with Tom Schimmer, who's been working with a lot of people within the province, has been where we've been gathering our data and looking for some support. So it's been a tremendous journey this year, and I've enjoyed it a lot. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Nancy. I appreciated that concept of shifting the perception back to the leadership, particularly of vice principals, and I think they get stuck with this that it is a position of leadership, and it is one that should be embraced. And so my question really is, moving forward, that small group success that I know has been there, I wonder how that will ripple to others, particularly in traditional staffs, as you talked about. So good luck with that. Sounds like lots of learning, which is fantastic. Okay, we're going to switch over to Darren and over to you guys. We've got a couple other Metro people who are planning to hook into us electronically in a little while, and when they do, we'll bring them back on site. But if we're ready to go over there in Golden, Greg, bring it on.
Can you hear me now?
You bet.
Okay, Greg is going to go first,
okay,
and I will follow him.
Greg Kenyon, I'm a principal in School District 19 at Revelstoke Secondary School, the only high school, of course, rural school. I just want to start by saying I want to congratulate Nancy. She and I had some pretty in-depth conversations in the summer at the short course, and I really appreciated picking her brain during those conversations, because some of the same issues she faced with a very traditional teaching staff, I also faced. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to do an inquiry on how to create collaborative learning environments, specifically within our grade 8 core subjects. And having the OECD principles running in the background as background script for ensuring that the students were at the center, and that what we were going to create allowed that kind of innovative learning environment. The other aspect that dovetailed nicely is that in our school district leadership group, we were focusing on the BCPVPA leadership standards. And the one I was focusing on was relational leadership, which included communication and collaborative environments. So they went a long way together. And so because that was happening, I was getting an incredible amount of support from our superintendent to ensure that the collaborative efforts that we were trying to do were being really supported in the school. So a big shout out to Superintendent Hooker. He did a great job by me and the school. What I would like to say is we tried to have structural components that allowed collaboration. We, after the summer, I went back and rejigged the schedule the best I could and was actually able to create common prep times for the teachers involved in the collaborative grade 8 core subjects. So even though that's not technically collaboration, what it did was provide that time if they so wished to collaborate. The other thing we did is we talked to our PHE folks and said, anytime you need to bring in a guest speaker for sexual education, we do avalanche safety training. Don't schedule it during your PE class, schedule it during those core subjects. We'll come in and supervise, and then our teachers can go collaborate. And then the last thing we did, and maybe one of the most effective things we did, is we offered to buy lunch. We have some really nice restaurants, and we would go out to local bistros and we'd buy lunch for these teachers and say, if you guys want to meet, we'll buy you lunch. And it just worked fantastic, because the ideas that would come up in those 45-minute bursts at lunch were incredible. And you know, you always nice to feed teachers. It's a great idea. So out of all that, what I expected was occurring. We were having great innovative learning environments in our grade 8 classes. And I quickly realized that what I'd learned in the summer and been introduced to by Dr. David Weiss, and being a leader of innovation, not an innovative leader, was really applicable there, because what I had created was a very diverse team that was working it out. And I had to make sure I wasn't getting in the way. I was supporting that and creating the boundary. It has to be, you know, a very precise boundary, but the uncertainty and the ambiguity were there. And I had to be able to really say, we need to model for our students. It's okay to make mistakes. And it was an incredible experience. So I guess just in my conclusion, I would say we started out by really focusing on an innovative learning environment for students. And what we created was an incredible innovative learning environment for our teachers. And to the point where some of the, referencing back to Nancy, some of the traditional silo type teachers, as she would say, are now clamoring to be involved in this type of effort, and we're actually extending it to grade 9. So the idea of innovation and teaming that with collaboration and teaming that with Dr. David Weiss's ideas really culminated in an exciting, innovative environment in our school now. There we go.
Cool.
Thank you very much, Greg. I appreciate that, and it's probably serendipitous that the two of you were going one after the other, both in similar traditional
Great timing.
schools. Yeah, who knew? I love that concept that you talked about in terms of you know, being setting the conditions with the students at the focus, then created the conditions for the teachers, which then is wrapped around to what's happened for the students. So kudos to that, and the fact that now you've got people wanting to do it. And it will happen for grade 9s. There's nothing worse than kids experiencing something in grade 8 and then hitting a wall again in the next, when they move on. And maybe that ripple will just continue through 10, 11, and 12 when you get to physics 12 as well. So good luck with that. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say there's nothing worse than grade 9.
Oh, no, grade 9s are the best. We all know that.
Oh, yeah.
Darren, why don't you jump in at this point too, and then we'll take a break.
Let's see if I can get this to share. Are you seeing the first slide?
We are. We're seeing the first slide.
4 panels.
4 panels.
Okay. I got a timer running here. So I have decided to share my journey with you month by month, sort of punctuating moments along the last 9 to 10 months. That means I've got about 10 slides. That's about 18 seconds per slide, so buckle in. My hope is to illustrate to you how I fostered the evolution of innovation at our school over the last 10 months. All right, so with that, let's see if this will advance like it's supposed to. There we go. After the short course 2, I got home in July, and then throughout August, I was thinking deeply about my school, the leadership, my growth plan for the coming year. And out of that, 2 big rocks emerged. And what you see are screen captures of the notes I made on the placemat provided to us in July at the short course 2. The 2 big rocks that sort of surfaced for me, one was place. Who are we and our culture in the valley we live in? And the second having to do with innovation and nurturing sparks of innovation where they appear. So those ruminated throughout the rest of the summer. And then it's not advancing like I want. There we go. And then we got to August, and we go back early in August. We have 3 days of Pro D front loaded. So we always spend a day as a staff doing some icebreaker stuff. And I decided to put a very focused lens on our activity. We had spent part of time in June sort of retooling our mission statement and just checking with ourselves, who are we and what are we about and what's our mission. So we looked at these 2 big rocks, that being culture and innovation, through this lens. And you can see one of the captures there is our mission statement. And these 2 were embedded with 6 others. We had 8 questions to ponder as we did a round of golf. And I think that, Liz, you would like that idea. Anyways, it fostered a great deal of conversation. come September, it was David Istant's words that dominated September for me as our staff. They sort of gravitated to the two big rocks that I had in my mind, and that was really very, what's the word I want? Sort of kismet. I mean, I hadn't really forced those 2 points that I took away from July, but they gravitated to those as a staff. And having the schedule of commitment that I've posted there for you as well, the Zoom meetings and the intermittent meetings with my table group sort of kept it as a focus for me as well, that I've committed to these things for the course of the year. However, even in September, I felt a bit of a shift in my focus. In July, I was talking with my table group about making my focus as a growth plan yet again this year to develop and foster really strong teachers, and through supervision of their instruction and deep, rich conversations. And I was seeing a shift a little bit, not that I abandoned this, but realized that innovation could revitalize the staff. And that would bring about a renewed passion and engagement in the classroom. So leadership in the staff emerged in the establishment of 2 ad hoc committees, and each of them adopted a significant task for the year. One would be to move our school forward in respect to honoring the place we are in, and the other would take on a rather cumbersome task. That was 3 minutes already?
Yep.
Oh, crap. Well, that's only September. I'll go really quickly through it. The 2 ad hoc groups just took the reins and led us through a year of exploration and development of plans for the coming year that are going to see us incorporate a new innovative timetable structure for our school that we haven't invented. We've borrowed from very large schools in the Lower Mainland. They've called it Flex Block. We're giving it a different title called Core. But I'm going to take you right to our May slide, because it's truly been a teacher-driven issue now. What you see there is a picture of the most recent staff meeting where I'm in the back completely sort of at the sidelines while the teachers have taken over ownership of this project and this development. We haven't changed our timetable in over 20 years, and they are keen and excited for this innovation, and I just see a revitalization of energy that can't help but have positive impact in the school. And on the right side, you see a really monstrous artistic installation that's going to be developed to honor the culture and place where we live and work. And again, that group has been such a strong group of leaders to raise the bar in terms of our honoring of place. So that's way over 3 minutes. Thank you for your time.
Wow. Thank you so much, Darren. I'm so curious as to how you got from October to May to switch a timetable to a flex block or a core. That's phenomenal. So I'm looking forward to seeing your slides. I'm sure other people are going to want to see how you did that.
If I'd had the time, and I'm sorry I was over time, but we did a survey in it was February, and the buy-in was we are 90% of the staff were just all in. They just saw this as an innovation that had merit and worth. And I just got out of the way. Again, David Istant's words about creating the conditions for innovation and just, foster it, step back, don't interfere a whole lot. And bring information. I did a field trip. I visited schools. I brought back information and possible models and then just let them run. So.
Well, it sounds like you absolutely set the conditions for yourself with your knowledge, and then set the conditions for your staff. And it sounds also like you were supported. It's not always easy just to say I'm going to switch my entire timetable and have that supported. Fantastic. Thank you very much. That was
a feature. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to. I think we're at 2:30, so we're gonna take our break now for 15 minutes, and I encourage people, if you've got food or water or drink or wherever you are or need to take a break and have some conversation and stand up and stretch, please do that. And we'll open that second Backbeat channel. So make sure you're on response number 2. And as you have conversation about those 4, about what you heard, appreciated, noticed, and wondered, put those in, and we'll see you back here in 15 minutes at 2:45.
My name's Dan Watt. I'm a principal at Ron Brent Elementary in Prince George, and I just found a typo on my inquiry statement. Never mind. I've been at Ron Brent for 4 years, and it is an inner city school. We have approximately 60% Aboriginal students, and most of our students have issues with poverty and trauma and such. So that is a big part of the context. Another piece that's relevant is when I began at the school, many of the teachers had been there for a very long time, ranging from 15 to 25, 26 years. So a fairly entrenched staff with ways of doing things. My area of focus for this project this year is on restructuring supports to improve literacy outcomes at the school. We had some structures and supports in place, and they were very invested in their guided reading programs. However, I noticed that their reading scores were pretty static, and we were looking at about a 50% rate of students reading at grade level in grade 2, the one grade that I surveyed out of interest. So one of the things that I knew I was going to need to do was support staff in a few key areas to be really clear on our school expectations and the district expectations, and provide some resources and that sort of thing. So what we implemented as a group of Tier 1 schools is the Comprehensive Academic Intervention Strategy, or CASE initiative, and that utilizes a Fountas and Pinnell resource, which folks are probably familiar with, the LLI, and its accompanying assessment tool, the BAS. So we implemented that in year 1 in our primary classrooms as a district initiative for our Tier 1 inner city schools. And so my inquiry project was to do a school-wide push. And so it was year 2 that we went school-wide, and it's been moderately successful. As I was just talking about having 50% of our kids not reading at grade level, some of our results are starting to trickle in. It's early days yet, but I'm seeing more like 60% are reading at grade level. And that in a context of, I'm looking at a grade 1-2 class right now, 7 kids are not meeting expectations. But of that, 2/3 of those kids are either Aboriginal or ELL, or both, as we know how that's typified in the 1701 count. So there's a bit of an improvement there. As you can imagine, as it moves up the grades to the intermediate level, that's looking like 1/3 to half of the class having a pretty significant impact on their learning, whether it's through simple ELL or something more serious, like a 1701 designation, special ed category. So that's a bit of our context. I got you. I see you there, Liz. I think a major challenge that I want to note beyond our northern geography and issues around isolation is challenge of training. So we've had pretty significant staff turnover at our school in the 4 years that I've been there. In this year, I've had 5 staff quit, and I have 4 priority transfer requests, folks that will be moving schools next year. So as you can imagine, with first-year teachers coming out from Ontario mid-year, it presents quite a challenge to bring them up to speed on our learning initiatives. And somebody mentioned in a previous presentation about being task-oriented and trying to work more towards being a learning leader. We've talked in our table conversation here, that's something I struggle with, because it feels like a large part of the job is being task-oriented and managing the minutia. And so getting to that, the learning leadership is still something that I'm working on. Thank you. You're muted still, Liz. You're muted still.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed the button. Thank you for that. I appreciate all of the work I know you've been doing on the literacy, and the results and whatnot are coming, but I'm really, really curious and would love to dive more into your conversations you've been having about being that learning leader in an environment where we get pushed so much into being a taskmaster. So thank you for that. And number 2, here we go.
Hi, I'm Jan Musselman from Quesnel. So my inquiry statement actually changed over the 3 days, that short course in July. I entered the short course knowing that I was going to have a huge turnover of staff. So 6 of my 9 retired or left, moved on, went to different schools. So I knew that what I had put my statement down in July might not exactly be what I was looking for in September. I was leaving, I had a fairly traditional staff, so not knowing what I was going to get, I was pleasantly surprised that I got some teachers who were super keen on creating a collaborative, student-centered learning environment that promotes the engagement of students and teachers. And I really wanted to tie it into the learning principles and the First Peoples principles. So the staff that came to me, I had 3 non-certs come. So that was an interesting dynamic. Teachers who'd never been in the classroom before, hired very late. So not a lot of, mentorship prior to them coming into a classroom. I also was fortunate actually to have a UNBC student do a practicum there. And one of the courses that she's taking at UNBC very much focuses on the OECD principles of learning. So through conversations and staff meetings and stuff, we often got a perspective from her as a beginning teacher. So it was fantastic to have that come in. We did a lot of discussion, monthly discussions around the OECD principles and tied them into our school growth plan. We also looked at the successful learner traits, which tie into the core competencies, because that was something we also really wanted to focus on. And in doing that, I don't have a lot of data around whether or not we have really increased the engagement of students, but we do notice that we have a lot more collaboration between classrooms. We have a lot of buddy things going on, buddy reading, lots of literacy stations, lots of math collaboration, classrooms cross-curricular, cross-grades, working on Rube Goldberg machines, healthy buddy, healthy living. So we are seeing a lot of student engagement. So that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Wow, that staffing issue is such a big one. And when you talk about setting conditions, sometimes you're handed conditions, and some of those conditions are traditional staff, and sometimes 6 of 9 turnover. But I really appreciated when you talked about it, sort of getting that beginning teacher's perspective, and what that can mean, and how you can embrace them in setting the conditions for others. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Dan.
Not Dan. Dan is my long lost brother.
Oh, there you are.
Dylan.
There you are, Dylan. Sorry.
There I am. So, my name is Dylan Watt. I'm a principal at a small rural elementary school and at a K to very much more rural K to 12 school at the west end of the district. Lots of common themes running through the conversations that I heard. My original inquiry was around I wanted to dip my toe in. I've spent many years in secondary, and I moved into elementary, so I wanted to get a sense of background of different literacy assessments, and so that I could lead my school into their literacy goal. Literacy and numeracy are big goals for my district. So my focus, my inquiry was way more task focused, I think. And I'm hoping that the results will then allow me to move into that leading for learning. I'm like a number of people who have commented. I have in my elementary school, certainly have a very entrenched staff that's been difficult to move. And I've been working at it in bits and pieces, little corners here and there. The district is very involved in Janet Mort's Joyful Literacy program. So I've managed to get one teacher who's keen to go on that, and she's actually dragging another couple of teachers along with her as she goes. So getting that collective efficacy moving. I think I'm really feeling good about how much more exposure to literacy terms, literacy goals that I've experienced over this last 8 months. And yeah, I'm really just looking forward to continuing my little journey. That's it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Dylan. I appreciate that. This idea of entrenched or traditional staffs keeps coming up. But in the light of that, I also hear so many of you talking about how things are moving forward, particularly through collective efficacy. Okay.
Okay, it's just me, Liz, to say that actually it was 3 participants here. So we are on now to the Terrace group.
All right, that's perfect. We'll catch you up in a little bit, Heidi. That's fantastic. Over to Terrace. Jessica?
Okay, we're ready, and we've got Peter, Scott, and Nancy here, and they're here to share their learning. I'm going to move away from it, and Peter, you're going to go first?
Jump in, sure.
Okay, big round of applause.
Okay, here you go. I'm just going to set up
only 2 of us.
We're trying to share the screen here.
Yeah, move it.
Okay. So once you hit, do I hit this button?
Are you doing the right thing?
I don't know.
You gotta click on what you want to share.
Oh. How do I share my, am I sharing? The PowerPoint?
You're sharing. That's great. PowerPoint's coming up.
Oh, sweet. Okay. Start slideshow.
Thank you.
Working? Maybe? Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, perfect. Okay, so there's some pictures. So my focus, our district was looking at doing a big push on literacy. Again, looking at data. Our numbers are pretty low. And so trying to improve literacy across the district. And one of my jobs is to, with my district duties, is to work with all the elementary schools, our middle school, and our alternate program, as well as our extended school that's really far away through Skype, to try to build in some literacy goals and try to work with them through an ADST kind of lens. And so my inquiry question was, how can you use ADST to improve literacy? So a lot of times we were using, I was working with teachers and tons of team teaching to do ADST, but you know, you go in, you do your thing, you show them some new skills, you work together, you collaborate, and then you leave, and then you come back later on or something. But this year, because of working in this program, I was really looking at how can I connect literacy to what we're doing, and really make that kind of the focal point, and really reinforce that with staff across all the schools to use that. So here we have a kindergarten student learning their letters, and instead of just writing it on a page 50 times, they are writing it on an iPad using an Ozobot to then code it so that it's just a little bit more interesting. And so you're doing the exact same thing you normally be doing, but more a tactile, kind of hands-on, inquiry-based fashion, and then at the same time facilitating other teachers to learn how to use those skills so that when you leave the classroom, they move away from the worksheets and continue to do it. The impact has been really, really good. I was pushed into this, or not pushed in, I provided this opportunity last year. And this year they increased my time at other schools by a lot, and allowed me to really get into classrooms. And so really working with creating now units with teachers, overviews, working with teachers, showing them that if they're having management issues, if you move to a more inquiry-based hands-on approach, you can accomplish your goals in a more purposeful manner without having to wait and deal as a manager. You're turning into a facilitator. And some examples of this, the district is really awesome. It is allowing me to do tons of district initiatives. So we do a science literacy week that some people in the different districts have done. And you connect with people via Skype all over the world. So if you're focused on, like we talked with people from the Macmillan Space Center to talk about space, we talked about people in Africa looking at geologists, all depending on what the theme was, what the classroom was doing, and work through them with that. We looked at science fair, moving from about, I think, 13 kids when I first started to almost 100 students a year later participating in science fair. Bridge building competitions, makerspace days, cardboard challenge days. We do Sphere Olympics, where we get groups of kids from across the district all work together and compete to overcome different coding activities. And then going back and looking at the benchmarks, Fontaine Spinel, I think Dan mentioned it before, and I'm sure other people are using it as well, to kind of guide to see where are things changing. And we noticed that through surveys and through the data, even though it's just May, that there are some big changes, noticeably in First Nations. So we have a high population. 64% of our district is First Nations, and it seems like those students in particular really connect with inquiry-based hands-on approach. And if we can connect it to the things in their culture or to the land, it seems to have even more of an impact. And then pushing that through a lens of literacy to, if you're looking at bridge building, researching bridges, looking at bridge, having engineers come in, all of those kinds of things to make it work. And and my big thing for my own learning journey was definitely go with baby steps. Sometimes you walk into a room and the teacher says they know what they're talking about in regards to tech or such, because I don't know, but they really don't. And so making sure you take a moment to listen and really see what their needs are, and working with the kids to see what their needs are as well. So a lot of times I've been now really trying to focus on even just walking into classrooms and just sitting and listening and having conversations with kids about what they're learning and what they want to learn, and what the purpose of what they're doing is. Scaffolding tech, both plugged and unplugged activities, so stuff that uses iPads versus stuff that doesn't, because tech and inquiry-based projects aren't necessarily tech-based. It doesn't have to be coding. There's tons on both ends. Trying to facilitate others is my big goal this year. So trying to create other people that will, be specialists at their schools, so that if they have a problem or if they're going to run a STEM day, they can run it, and then if they need me, I can come in and help, versus me running everything. And my learning from other schools as a result of this inquiry, more teachers, administrators taking an active role, like I said before, more purposeful learning is occurring, which is really, really good. So here we have a picture of an alternate class. And it's funny because when I first went into that classroom at the beginning of the year, they had about 2 to 3 people show up on a regular basis. By the time we finished our first unit, they had about 14 or 15 people. So those are 14 or 15 people that are now attending school, versus before where we only had 2 or 3. And so I went there a lot this year, and really helped work with the teacher to go, if it's not the students that have to change, it's the teacher. And if you teach in a different way, they will attend. And fostering that leadership in them. And the district's been super supportive and making that happen. Teachers are now are really on the ball for asking for help and working together and creating things within their own schools to keep this going, and giving lots of collaboration time with students. Teachers are now working with each other to figure out what's the best way to go. Some things that have informed my practice over the course of this year is working with different specialists, especially in the ISTE community, for those people that are aware of it. Multitude of webinars through the BCPVPA, also the ISTE, because they always have a ton of ADST kind of based things, and of course collaboration with different people in our school and you guys as well. So thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That's great. Just hit the stop sharing down at the bottom. There we go. Beautiful. Hey, I really appreciate that idea of talking about moving from a manager to a facilitator by being in classrooms, and clearly that's making a difference for where you are, because you've really increased that. And how you do that with technology, it's important that we know how to do that. All right, thank you very much. And who's next over there?
Nancy.
Nancy.
Can you
Nancy.
Nancy's.
Do you want me to move?
It would be better.
Can you see me better? I don't see anything on the screen, so I'm just gonna go. Hi, my name's Nancy. I'm from Telegraph Creek. Woohoo! Took a side trip to Atlin this year, but anyways, here we go. So my intention for my inquiry was to work with staff and students to continue creating a positive learning environment and improve learning. We worked hard last year at the end of the year in June to come up with some plans for collaboration starting in September. But there was forest fires, and we ended up, people got dispersed throughout the district, and I ended up being principal at Atlin School. So while I was there for 4 months, I really worked on, I can't remember the name of the gal at one of our webinars, but she talked about creating a culture of yes. So I really worked on that because I was just at the school, I was new, and a couple of the teachers had attended a growth mindset workshop at UBC in the summer. So anything they asked me about, I said, yep, let's do it. Yep, let's do it. So they wanted to order these resources, and I'm like, yes, yes, yes. So we ended up getting boxes of all kinds of great stuff. And the other thing I introduced to them was the 6 cedar trees core competencies, and added some morning announcements into the school and reflected the core competencies in that as well to move the school forward in that. And then in January, we reopened the school in Telegraph Creek. I was the only teaching principal there, and then we had our Aboriginal language and culture assistant. And we started with 6 kids on Monday. By Friday, we had 12. And then the next week, we had 16, and from K to 9. So I had to be innovative and inquiry, and we did a lot of what Peter spoke about, hands-on projects, because when you have 2 kindies that are coming in, they want to play, they want to do stuff. The grade 9s are not engaged at all, so you got to get them back on track. And so it worked really well. We did an egg drop. And then I also, because there was only 2 staff members, I needed the kids' help to get things done. So we created a school banking system, and we had class jobs. And each morning, not every kid got a job. So that was kind of real life. You might not get work today. And then each kid got $20 extra a day, plus they had to fill out timesheets for their 6 hours a day. And then after 2 weeks, there was a timesheets were handed in. Then the older kids calculated the pay stubs, and they had to figure out the income tax and the EI and the CPP. And then kids could deposit it or withdraw money. And then we had a store, and the little kids loved it. And of course, I had all kinds of crazy stuff they could buy. And then, but they also had to fill out a bank application, and just having them, what's your phone number? Well, I don't know my phone number. And your birthday, and sign your name. I don't know how to sign my name. So so much of this stuff was going on. And then after 3.5 weeks, 2 teachers came to Telegraph. So I had a few things in place, and they were on board. They're like, yeah, let's keep it going. So it turned out really great. And then we just carried on. And then another thing that came up in a staff meeting was the core competencies and the self-assessment. And we really, the staff were like, you know, we need some more support in this. So we added it to our morning announcements, and the staff picked 2 focus areas for 2 weeks at a time. And then I would in the morning do an announcement. What did you do today to honor your roots, like Orca from the 6 cedar trees? And then one way you could honor your roots is recognizing you come from the Tahltan First Nation, or your family's from China, blah, 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 blah. And then we kept that going as well. We did, and now the teachers, they did a ramp project and integrated groupings, and then they did a science project, and kids that normally wouldn't present were presenting, because the little kids went first, and the little kids rocked it, and then the older kids were like, I can do this. And normally they're like, oh. Anyways, so it was great. And then now we have a cultural fair coming up for social studies, and the kids all have a country. There's going to be food. It's going to be fantastic, and it's great. And my learning journey continues with various blogs and whatever else, Genius Hour, Spirals of Inquiry, Wait by Why, and Wait But Why. And yeah, that's about all I got. And thank you for inviting me back.
Wow. Nancy, you're never short on energy, and I love that about you. And I think we could probably all agree that in a small place that you have been to and from based on fires and whatnot, the innovation with which you approach every day is really quite something. And so I applaud you on that. And that idea of being able to do it collaboratively is just that much better. But there's only you to collaborate with sometimes, and you do a good job. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Jess, is anybody else there?
That's it. We're
perfect. All right. Well, we're pretty much, we're just a little bit ahead, which is great. But I think all the participants have had an opportunity now. Yes. Great. Then we're just going to take, we'll maybe shorten this up and take about 10 minutes on the last backbeat about what you heard from what was going on up in PG and Terrace. And there certainly are some different things that happen in those rural environments. So let's take 10 minutes on the backbeat, and then we'll come together. Remember, you're on. Okay, so we'll see you back at 20 after 3. That the narrative within and the narrative without. There's sort of those two pieces, and it sounds like you're well on the way. So congratulations. We'll make sure we post that video so that you can see that coming forward. So congratulations. Okay. Let's go. Who's up next? Do we want to stay here for now? All right. Margaret. Let's keep the 3 now, everybody. Oh, here, take this chair.
Thank you, Liz.
You're welcome.
Great. Hi, everybody. I've done something a little bit different with my report out of my reflection. I wanted to go back to what the participation in short course meant to me as a facilitator. And so I went back and reviewed the activities that we took part in. And we started with that water ceremony about courage and clarity. And through that, it required us to be present, to participate, to understand the purpose, and understand the place. And so I took those values back. When we spent time building connections as a summer family, it did take time. It was important that we set norms at the beginning for our actions together, even though that might have seemed obvious. It required deep listening to one another, required us to be vulnerable and able to share our struggles, not just our successes as leaders. And we realized it's not about who we are or what we've done, but who we can become. We learned from David and Amelia that we can use these OECD principles of learning to enhance our school. And we wondered how to flourish as leaders and help other staff members and teachers flourish when we live in a VUCA world. And then we had the field experiences. And we found many people creating their own occupation, creating their own niche, as though they were saying, here is something you didn't know you needed, but it's going to change your life. And that was very powerful. So I started my first staff meeting in September with that story, that young people are creating their own occupations, and that there really is only one 21st century learning skill, and that's the ability to respond to something you've never seen or heard before or done before. So one of our school goal was around creating flexible learning spaces. We have a very compliant student body who aren't able to easily articulate what they are learning and why they're learning it. But I found the most successful thing was being able to personalize and differentiate support for my staff members, finding that entry point for each of them. So we began to put together with our district innovation grants the flexible learning spaces within our school, but also within microenvironments within the classrooms with alternative seating, wobble stools, bean bags, high stools, low tables, and so on. We created a working wood shop in the school, an atelier for math and science, and then an outdoor classroom space. And what we found when checking in, that we saw students with increased stamina for learning, increase in collaboration and cooperation. We got rid of almost 300 desks, and we're able to have kids work together at a table. And they were working with increased creativity and critical thinking, prototyping, working through different iterations, not just with the growth mindset, but not just keep trying, keep trying, but try different things. And students inspired each other. One of my favorite things was dealing with two little boys that had been naughty at recess. And I said, well, you know, he was making this poor choice. Why did you do that as well? Well, he inspired me, said this little guy. I just want to finish by saying the best part of being a short course facilitator was the reassurance that I am part of a community of educators who are highly invested, thoughtful and reflective about the craft of leadership and the quality of the education in their schools and districts. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Margaret, and I appreciate you starting with taking us back and referencing those things from last July and then moving them all the way forward. It staggers me how much innovation has obviously happened over this year, so I really appreciate hearing all the stories. Jeff, are you ready to join us now?
Thank you. Hello. I'm really pleased and very humbled to hear all of the work that's going on. I'll share a little bit about what we were doing. I thought at my school I'd set the stage for a culture shift. And then after a short course, I went back with some ideas which I thought were relatively minimal, particularly around cross-curricular engagement in the school. We already had a school plan that included working on teacher wellness. What behaviors and attributes could the teachers model to improve both teacher and student wellness? And it looked pretty progressive as part of our school plan. There's some Indigenous ways of knowing initiatives in the school plan. And the people drafting the school plan and working on it were staff members. It was a really, really vital group. So everything looked pretty nice and well poised. We got off to a pretty good start, and we got a little bit interrupted. One of the things was that people had retreated a little bit to look after their own personal wellness, and so they're looking after their physical wellness first. That was meant that they withdrew from some things, and in our building we are motivation isn't a problem. Everybody's a little over-motivated. It's a very high-achieving, academically oriented school. I'd say perhaps our biggest failures are that some of the struggling learners don't get enough attention or don't get the courses that they need. But when teachers started to look after how much they were doing and thought, oh, I'm going to do a little less of this or get off of this committee, that took the wind out of the sails of the building a little bit, and some of the students didn't know what to make of it. It didn't necessarily look like good role modeling. So we re-examined that as a staff, and around about November, we went through a little bit of a school trauma that was unrelated to our initiatives. It wasn't part of that. It was something we didn't see coming, and we had to reflect on our whole school culture. It had an impact on our school culture, and again, maybe took a little bit of the initiative out of some of the great things staff were doing. So to bring things back into focus, we have certainly the school plan group has worked with them on this. We went to look at the good things that had continued going on. There were some inquiry groups that were going before the beginning of last year and had continued. I've been maintaining a sort of a personalized pro-D funding for people, so people had kept on with some of their pursuits. There's a group that's been working on inquiry around an environmental course kind of certification that runs across the curriculum and includes Indigenous ways of knowing and a variety of sort of green initiatives that they're finding in all the courses, and the teachers are going to be applying to have their course get a little green leaf so that students get a certification at the end of the year or at the end of the 2 years. And that has just kept going regardless of anything that's going on. And it now has kind of layered in or jumped in on the other things that were going on in the school plan. And that's really kind of revitalized people a little bit. They'll be making a presentation at our next school plan meeting. And another thing that helped was we did a personal and professional inventory one day at one of our collaboration times. And I got a lot of thank yous that I didn't expect because it was a raucous group. It was like having a grade 9 class doing this staff meeting. And they were really making me laugh because they were so badly behaved. But it was great, and it was in pretty good fun, and they were doing a personal inventory, and they wanted to know for marks. I mean, they were very concerned, and they didn't have their pencils. But at the end of that, having written a personal inventory of 5 priorities and a professional inventory, they looked for matches. And many of them actually went home and had discussions with their partners and families after that small session. It wasn't long. I think that's bringing us back to people a little bit of a shift. We're at the end of year 2 on our school plan, and there's new interest, I guess, in flex time. It's been brought up a couple of times in our school and has not moved, but I think there's a renewed interest in doing that in a different fashion. And that's, sorry, way over time. My apologies. Anyway, so it's looking pretty good now. We seem to have gotten back together, and thank you very much for all your leadership and all your great ideas.
Wow, thank you so much, Jeff. You know, when you're tackling that idea of culture, there's so much to do, and I was really interested when you say that wellness, in a sense, and the focus on wellness can sometimes get in the way of an initiative in the sense that people need to take a step back. So I was really impressed by the way you went then back to inventory and pick those 5 professional and personal things that allow people then to reignite and move forward. I thought that was a very helpful tip, so thank you for that. All right, Heidi, are you up there? Turn on your mic, and we'd love to hear from you.
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me? Excellent. Okay, first I'd like y'all to know that the scar above my eye has healed beautifully, and no one would know of my incident at Short Course. So I'll just be very quick. My inquiry was how to inspire and set conditions for innovation, and that really came out of the experiences we had in Kelowna. I'd like to thank Margaret for reminding us of the importance of taking time. Because those of us who are enthusiastic about change often have to remember that takes time. So in my school, I'm in high school principal in Burns Lake. We have a very effective collaboration model in place, which is a late start every Wednesday morning. So that piece is already built in. And so I was looking for ways to move my staff who've been weren't running the same timetable and running essentially the same supports and kinds of things for a long time, many of whom attended the high school itself. So I did 2 things purposefully with them. I took a group of department heads on a trip to another school district where they have a radically different timetable. Not because I thought they should move to that model, but because I wanted them to see something completely different to inspire their thinking. And the second thing I did was I took a school planning day and broke the staff into small groups and took them out to local employers to talk about what they see, how they see the school, what they're looking for in learners, that kind of thing, or in employers. And also that was sort of twofold. It was to bring back a focus for discussion, but also to build partnerships within the community. So that was hugely successful. People are still talking about it. They want to do it again next year. So that was really great. And from that has just become, like one of the other presenters talked about, the culture of yes. People bringing me ideas and And I say yes as much as I possibly can, but I say yes, tell me more, or yes, who's going to work with you on it, or yes, you know, what's your timeline, that kind of thing. And it's, we've had at least three big innovative things, projects or changes or courses come to us that we don't really have time to talk about today. But it's been really successful. And can you hear me, or are you now hearing the others? Oh, those are my girls from my group. Wait your turn.
Yeah, sorry, we just finished our meeting. Oh my God.
Okay, you just need to mute yourselves.
Okay.
Anyway, I'll just close by saying an unexpected success with that is we're now facing some huge budget cuts in our school and in our district, and instead of anger and frustration, I have staff who are looking for creative solutions. So that's been really refreshing for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Heidi. Well, I love, you know, I mean, it's all about setting those conditions, and I like that. And I liked how you also talked about the culture of yes, but the culture of yes with some boundaries. But your boundaries weren't here's the box. It's tell me more, and that boundaries of curiosity sometimes allow for just that much more collaboration as it moves forward. So, and you run out to the businesses. Way to go! That's fantastic. I'm glad you took that forward. It is effective. All right. Well, we're going to say welcome to Naomi, but we're going to. Sorry. Oh, and Joanne. Yep, you're both there. That's fantastic. We're just wrapping up with some facilitators. I'm going to let you hear a couple more of the, or a Bev, anyways, of the sharing, and then we'll come to you guys, and you can do your sharing as well. Okay. So, Bev, we're going to go over to you now. Are you there?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Is that a yes? Yeah. Liz, you can hear her? Okay. All right. All right. So first of all, I want to say thanks for the opportunity to facilitate in Short Course 2, and the year-long journey has been interesting, not only in my school, but also as a facilitator and reflecting on that. And if ever the opportunity arises again, I think just an inquiry around the facilitation piece would be really interesting, because often I've been doing it for a bit, but I don't often take the time to inquire about how I can change my own practice around that formally. For my school, I think that the whole concept of change takes time. I think that leading a culture of change takes more time. So I'm on year 3 at a dual track French immersion school with very different populations, the French immersion side and the English side. And so it's taken me 2 years to sort of get a feel and get my feet under where we need to go next. So just trying to find a growth plan that everybody can buy into, so it's there's so much diversity. So we've chosen formative assessment, and people had to pick sort of 2 areas that they wanted to focus on, and they have to present at the end of the year on their learning journey. So I'm really looking forward to that. By the end of year 2, it appeared to be very easy to get everyone on board. So that's great. And then just changing the narrative of the school has sort of been an ongoing background for me. So it's year 3 of sort of how do I change the narrative. My first year when I went there, the French immersion students had all the leadership. Our English side, it's lower socioeconomic. It's just a different clientele. And all our office monitors were French immersion. When there was anything needed in the school for leadership, it was French immersion kids. So now it's actually in 3 years, it's changed a lot. So the leadership pieces are going to both classes. They're working together more. The kids are working together more. And our intermediate students on the English side are actually starting to volunteer more, because the first year I was there, they volunteered for nothing. But after 6 or 7 years of not being a part of leadership in the school, that message was really loud. So my next steps are sort of to work with more evidence, but that's going to be a change too, because I'm going to disaggregate the English and the French data. So
yeah, I think that's about it. I'm looking forward to hearing sort of the reporting out of my teachers. And again, thanks for short course 2. And I always enjoy learning from everybody else. Thanks.
Thank you, Bev. You're absolutely right that changing the narrative, it definitely takes time and it takes patience, and it's so fantastic when you start to see the fruits of it. And having been in an immersion school, I completely relate to the dynamic. As rich as that can be, it's sometimes challenging as well. So congratulations on that. All right, I think that's all of our facilitators. So we're going to jump back now to Naomi and Joanne, and just to say to the two of you, we've each been taking a few, 3 minutes to talk about those questions that were presented. And at the end of that, once you're done, then we'll get to one last backbeat before we come back together. So over to you two. Hold on, we need you to unmute before you.
You can hear us? Can they hear us?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, but now we can't
hear
her.
We can't hear you, but if you can hear us, that's great. I'm going to try to just share some pictures here and see if this works. Hold on. Can you see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so awesome. I'm going to try talking from this as just a little bit of visuals here. So starting off in short course, you can see the inquiry focus or inquiry question for me was being able to create conditions that support collaborative inquiry. That was sort of the broad question, and I was hoping to try to interweave and get some more cohesion going with various different innovation initiatives that we have going on in the school. So just to highlight a couple things, what was nice about starting short course 2 when I was in my second year at the same setting was we've already kind of laid the foundation with some relationships. And we did have one innovation grant around learning spaces, which you can see here in this picture, that took place the year prior to short course. So something exciting that sort of morphed for me was working in this collaborative arts-based space. And as an experienced vice principal, I designed a new course this year around leadership and community. And working with a teacher, we decided to use the spirals of inquiry to have students interview students. So what you can see in these pictures is just a lot of the different grade 4, 5, and some grade 6 students interviewing other students. So we had almost every single one of our students interviewed in this new learning space in our school throughout the year. And then I'm working with my leadership students now in to make the sort of our learning story come alive. But how does this get back to that idea of building a kind of collaborative conditions for collaborative inquiry? What was neat about this is these weren't prep blocks. These were invitations to teachers to come with their classes, to be a part of this with us and to watch how their learners were answering questions, what they were able to articulate about their learning and where they're going to next. And it sort of incidentally got buy-in, which was really quite exciting. In addition, we do have a couple other inquiry projects, one around inclusive learning communities that has kind of brought in a new focus area on social emotional learning, which also came out of our student data, and a student reporting pilot project. So we've been working with the digital portfolios. So we've had all 3 of these things going on, and probably one of the exciting culminating things happening tomorrow for our Pro D is we're working with staff to refine our school story. And we have a graphic artist parent on staff who's in the process of designing this really beautiful mural for us. That's this is the last picture I have of it, but the more up-to-date version is this will all kind of go around a tree with the idea that, growth is taking place. There's roots there, and the kind of visual frames that are going to be part of the spirals are going to showcase what students are learning, what teachers are learning, have student voice as a part of that. and hopefully have cohesion around all of the different inquiries that we've been working on. It's not finished. I think it'll be ongoing. And I think we do have to grapple with how we infuse a little more learning along the way with staff. But that's sort of where we got to in a nutshell. Let me just cheat here and check my notes that I made before. And in terms of just getting back to the course, just what I've really learned about myself is I'm always searching for creative and meaningful ways to connect, and I found that short course was really helpful with that. So thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. And I love that image, and I love the innovation to the spiral. And I bet Judy and Linda will love that too. Thank you for that. I really appreciate the creativity that you've got and the network that's built that's allowed you to do that. I'll get you to stop sharing your screen now. There's a button on the bottom right, I think.
It's on the top.
There we go. Fantastic.
I should have gone first.
Okay. Well, you've got 3 minutes to go now, and we're delighted to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Okay. So I don't know if this is going to work because, so on this iPad, I've done it through Clips, which is just an Apple app on it. And so I've tried to put this together for 2 reasons. One, it's more visual, and I'm not I don't like writing. So, and I've only used this app twice. So it's another learning piece within the learning, if that makes sense. So kind of just trying to pull things together. And I'm just more visual. So I just kind of prefer visual with less words and trying to present the message. So I don't know if this is going to work, if I can hold it up to the screen and you guys will be able to see it, but I'll try to.
No, I think unfortunately that's not going to at all because screen to screen doesn't usually pick up.
Can I dial back in and then share it?
I'm sorry, can you what?
Can we not share it the way I share it?
And I have a USB cord, that's the only other thing, but that's just charging.
Yeah, we need to hook into the, can you save that and send it to us though? Like, is that going to be a file you can send?
I can attempt it because I did save it once already, but then it kind of messed itself up when it was saving the video, so half of it got lost. But
all right, well then I'm gonna hang on to it, and if you can get it to us, we will share it out to everybody so they can get us. But let's give you an opportunity to talk with us now.
All right, so you have to listen to me. My apologies. So again, it started out very similar rationale at the beginning was, so second year at a site, single administrator. So the only principal of school of about 225. Spent the first year, again, just building relationships, trying to get to know staff and students and have an understanding of the school. And then the short course question, the inquiry question that I was able to come up with was really, how to best support the adults in our building to take risks with their own learning, with the long-term goal of trying to have them share that with students, to have the students take risks with their learning. Because what I was able to articulate through Short Course 2 last year was really, it's the adults that need to go through this process before they're going to be willing to take it into their classrooms. Wow. So in doing that, last year, our district has innovation grants. And so then last year we had one person on staff who was doing the communicating student learning through e-portfolios, which this year in our district meshed into the student reporting pilot policy. Project. Yeah. I forget the 2 piece at the end. So this year we went from one person alone doing an innovation grant to 3 different innovation grants on site. So we had 2 teachers who were looking at their practice, and they were focused on flexible learning environments in a kindergarten grade 1 class. So I had some lovely, cute little pictures for you to share about that. But they've just looked at their own practice, which is really great for those 2 individuals. We had 2 individuals who were part of the SRPP. One was a new teacher that was on staff that took on the reporting through the e-portfolios. And then we had a temporary librarian who has come in, and our district has innovation grants in learning library commons. So she has changed the shape and face of the library over the course of 8 months into a collaborative kind of ADST creative space. And then throughout the course of this year, I've actually provided collaboration time for all the staff members. So they had a predictable schedule, and we kind of based it on the big ideas, if they were doing flexible learning environments, if that was kind of their inquiry piece or what they wanted to look at within their own practice. Then I took 5 divisions one week, 5 divisions another, and then once a term I would take all 10 divisions. So all teachers were released. So tomorrow we're kind of culminating by it was forced collaboration, whether people are using it or not. That's to get feedback. We have a professional day tomorrow. So kind of my next steps are to actually seek feedback through a survey tomorrow via staff around my leadership, what's working, what are the stretches, what are the strengths, what are the stretches, what do they need more of to move ahead next year, as well as collaboration time. Is it working for them, and what might that look like next year? So that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah. And it was
thank you very much. Yay. We will look forward to seeing those slides, and really, if they can be sent to us in a format that we can post up, we would be delighted. We're going to do that with all the presentations that did happen today. So we'll work on that one with you. And thank you also for that last comment when you talked about the feedback just right at the end there, and the vulnerability as leaders that we need to have in order to ask for and hear. Because if we are truly learners, we too need to be garnering that, and it isn't something we always do really easily. So that it's a perfect place to end our presentations for today, and say thank you for that, for risking to get feedback, and we will be doing that with all of you shortly. We're going to give you one last. I think we have now covered everyone who's been on. We have heard so much. I don't know about you. I know I still have concussion syndrome going on and my brain hurts like heck, but I wouldn't be surprised that some of yours don't too, because we've been filled with so much this afternoon. But I'm going to give us one last time to go to Backbeat for our final response on number 4. And so it would to respond to some of what we heard from our facilitators and Joanne and Naomi. And we'll just give ourselves maybe, can we do this in about 5 minutes, folks, do you think? Or do you want 10? Can we do it in 5? Okay, 5 it is on the Backbeat, and then we'll be back on in 5 minutes. And say to people as we come to a close. So let me turn it over to you, Terry, for a couple minutes, and then yeah, pop up to wherever the mic is. And then Sabre will give you the last,
okay,
the last couple.
We need to turn our cameraman
Well, there we go.
Here she comes. Oh, perfect. Oh, put it together. You can both talk. That's fantastic. But now you only get 4 minutes.
No. You just need to talk in here.
Yeah. Only 4 minutes now.
Only
Please.
4 minutes. Oh my goodness. That's
Total combined or each?
Yeah. This is the box part.
So I'm going to go ahead because I'm going to give Terry a big shout out here. She was the one who initially brought us all together, talking about opportunities and needs for professional learning and ongoing learning for mid-career principals. And so Terry really was the catalyst here, brought us all together. And for me, as a relative newbie in the group around connecting with the BCPVPA and district and university, it's really been an opportunity for us to explore professional learning when having the whole system in the room to talk about designing learning for a system, and to have district university association. We had our practitioners in the room with us as part of the planning, and I think it's really reflecting a shift across the province, and I think we are provincial leaders in designing learning thoughtfully, purposefully, inclusively, and thinking about how can it be a responsive model. So for me, it has just been an absolute pleasure to work with the planning team in terms of trying to create that, and then seeing our folks, in Kelowna, in up north, across the coast, to see the ways that you've engaged and taken up the invitation to prototype with us what this could mean to learn in new and different ways. So a big thank you to facilitators and to our participants and the planning committee, because embarking on this prototyping, building the new system of learning as we live it, it was an exciting opportunity. It came with lots of risk. And thank you to Liz and Jess for being the connectors through all of this. So I'll turn it over to Terry.
Well, Sabra has wrapped it up so beautifully, and just a huge thank you to everyone involved, because I think that we've really embarked on the learning together. And even today, as we sit in our smaller groups, there's a real sense of collaborative inquiry. And we've done some back channeling ourselves even this afternoon, with sharing different resources that people are reading, talking about different school community plans and the ways that we're embedding inquiry and building innovative learning communities and professional learning communities. And we're all taking away little pieces today that will help us continue to push our professional learning forward. And I'm just delighted to have had the opportunity to be involved and to look at how we can support our principals around the province and learn and grow together. And we're also taking away, as a planning committee, lots of things that we would do differently based on beautiful, authentic feedback throughout the journey of the year. And we really encourage in all of the different areas in the province to, feed forward that feedback for us so that we can help to continue to set the conditions. The other piece that I think that we are really appreciative of, we are appreciative of, is also the ministry's contributions to make this happen for us, because we were able to bring in thought leaders that enable us, whether it was, through Skype and it was David Weiss, or it was, having David Istance and Amelia here in the summer. That's incredible. And those connections that enable us to really think beyond our local or provincial context and continue to embed the work that we're doing and have it stand on research. And that's what really carries, I think, all of us as professional learners, is when we are engaged in that synergistic collaborative inquiry and understanding that we're getting better as professional learners because of what we're reading and how we're engaging with each other. So, I think this is a prototype year. We've learned a ton about technology, when it works, when it doesn't. We've learned a ton about the opportunities to connect what works in the sense of coming together and how many times we should come together, whether we should continue with a year-long model and what that'll look like. But I think one of the biggest pieces I'm taking away is to not apologize for carving out space as instructional educational leaders to learn together. And we've had lots of different iterations of what that looks like and how people are really trying to set, as David, am I saying his last name right? Weiss, right? How he would say that, we set the conditions for innovation. And I think Darren was the person today that reminded us of that. And I'm really grateful for the opportunities to continue to learn. And I'm hoping that as we move into the second iteration of UBC Short Course 2, that we'll look at being able to embed that within our workday at times so that we can collaborate together and it's not an add-on, because I think professional learning is something that we should be doing as part of our work. And I'm so grateful for the opportunities. So I've rattled a bit, but I'm hoping that you'll be able to take a few pieces from that. That was probably 10 minutes.
Terry, anytime. Thank you so much. And Jess, do you have anything you want to add before we close out here?
No, I just want to add it's been a thrilling ride and a journey on this learning journey. All the participants, the planning committee have added so much to the professional learning and development for principals and vice principals along the way. I think it's always been a dream in each of our heads on the committee and the participants that we can engage in lifelong learning, long time after we've finished our master's programs, long time that we've been principals for 15 or 20 years, because learning is engaging, it's motivating, and it drives us to make things better for our students and for everyone that we're involved with. So it's been my honor to work with everybody on the planning committee to see the fruition of this dream that was talked about many, many years ago. And it will continue because the passion's there and the right people are there. So thank you.
Thanks, Jess. And just before we wrap, I want to just turn this over here just for a second. There we go. There's Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie, I just need to say thank you because she's held us all together in so many ways. Well, folks, I think that's it. We amazingly are right on time with our agenda, and who knows what it would have been if everybody had been on site. But what a rich afternoon, and what a rich year it has been. I know that each site, if they haven't already rolled out some food for you, they will and take care of that. I know that people have to run. I see Darren. Yeah, you guys are going for a beer, aren't you? Yeah, I knew that. I knew that. Yep. But we will mail out all the certificates to you. We're expecting and hoping that if you can put into a page or two some of the thoughts you shared today without being overly extensive, because there is no time for that, we would appreciate that because it gives us another record. We have recorded all of your work today, and as evidence of our learning together, and we'll make that available through Better Educate moving forward. So once again, on behalf of the BCPVPA, thank you so much for being part of this journey. Spread the news, tell people to get involved. We want to have more people doing the kind of learning that you are, because it's the right thing to do for kids. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a great rest of the run to the end of the year. Bye.